I was saying, if you want to unmute, that shouldn't cover over too much. All right, guys, we are going to get started here today. We are at Rudgers Registered Jersey with Lyman Rudgers, and we are going to learn a little bit about cows and what they eat. So, Lyman, do you want to give us kind of a little bit of a info about your farm?
Yep. So we're standing here in our milk cow barn right now. We've got about 250 cows that we milk 3 times a day. Almost all Jerseys. Got a couple of mixed breeds in here, but almost 100% Jerseys. We've got a handful of part-time employees, 2 full-time, and my wife and I.
Awesome. So, do all of your cows here on your farm eat the same type of feed?
So all of the milk cows get the same feed, but our younger heifers and dry cows and calves get their own separate diets that are all formulated specially by a cow dairy nutritionist.
Awesome. So do you want to explain a little bit about let's start with your milk cows. What are something that your milk cows eat?
So our milk cows get corn silage, which is the full corn plant chopped up into little pieces. If you were on our last video, you might remember that. The other portion of their diet is hay silage, which is like your grass hay that you would see out in the field, chopped up into small pieces. And then we add grain and water to the mix to make a complete mix. We add the water to make it stick together like you would add water or oil to making cookies so that it all sticks together.
Awesome. Let's take a look over here at what type of food we got for these girls.
All right, so this is our milk cow diet. And if we search through this, I can find a couple of corn kernels. So there's one corn kernel from our corn plant. This browner stuff here, all of this dark brown, that's the hay silage we were talking about. And all of these lighter brown pieces are parts of the corn plant. And then if you look at all of it, you can kind of see the grainy mixture that's kind of stuck to the haylage and corn. That would be the grain that was added to it and all mixed together. And then it looks very wet because we add the water to make it stick together. So you want it to stick, want the grain to stick to it so that it doesn't separate out. So the cows, every bite that a cow takes should be the same. Nice,
awesome. So what are these cows doing over here that look like they're chewing some bubble gum?
So cows, interestingly enough, have one stomach with 4 different compartments. And so unlike humans where we swallow our food and then it gets digested, cows will take a mouthful of food, they'll chew it and swallow it, and it'll go down into their first compartment of their stomach. And then several hours later, when they're done eating, they will regurgitate that food and they will chew it again. A healthy cow will chew it again 30 to 50 times each mouthful, and then they will re-swallow it, cough up another piece of food, and chew it again. That's called their cud. So they regurgitate their cud and chew it a second time. So if you look at any of these cows that are just hanging out, just chewing their cud, they would have basically a baseball size piece of mouthful of food in their mouth that they're chewing again. This cow that's right in front of you just swallowed, and more than likely we'll see her regurgitate another one, and now she just started chewing another mouthful of cud.
So do cows have teeth on their top of their mouth?
They do not. So cows have teeth all the way around on the bottom, and then they have teeth in the back on the top. And the reason that is they have the teeth on the bottom that would push against what they call a dental pad on the top, which is just their gums. And that's actually made for when cows are on pasture so that they can grab the grass and break it off and pull it up and eat it. So it makes it much easier for them to grab a hold of grass and pull it up. So they do not have teeth on the top.
Very interesting. Oh, she was just going to show us. So how much feed does your cows eat on a daily basis?
So our these milk cows get 125 pounds of feed a day. So that would be about 55 pounds of corn silage, about 21 pounds of haylage, another 25 pounds of grain, and then another approximately 25 to 30 pounds of water mixed into that.
All right. So for the classrooms on, I have a question for you guys, and I want you to type it into the chat. I want you guys to take a guess on how much water a cow drinks a day. So I'll let you guys think about that. You can either do it in gallons or what we might assume how much they drink. While you guys are doing that, let's take a look at some of the different grains that we have that Lyman uses on his farm.
So we talked about at the beginning that each age group of our animals get different feeds. So we're going to start right out here at the beginning. So this is our youngest animal grain. So this is for our dairy calves. While our dairy calves are getting milk, they're also getting what we call a starter. So the starter has some cornflakes in it. It's got a pellet, which is made up mostly of soy for protein. And then we can find some oats in here. Now this is all mixed together, and you can see it's kind of dark brown. It's dark brown because it's got molasses mixed in with it, and the molasses makes it taste sweet, makes it taste good, just like molasses cookies, so that those new calves have never had grain before, never had anything other than milk, learn to eat it and like the taste of it, so that they'll eat more and more. Then once they are about 3 months old, then we will transition off of what we call the calf starter onto a calf pellet, which is a much simpler diet. It's has very similar nutrient value of the starter, but doesn't have that extra molasses for the extra taste. It's just the grain itself. So our heifers will get this from between 4 months to about 2 years old. They would get this grain. And then we move down the line to our next pile. And this pile looks very long, a lot of fiber, not real tasty, right? So when the cows aren't milking and they're dry, they're on vacation basically. And so they get a 2-month vacation. And during that time, because they're not making milk, they use a lot less nutrients to maintain themselves because they're not putting it into their milk. So we feed them a mixture of some corn. You can see a little bit of corn in here. And the other part of this mixture is straw. And you guys are probably thinking, well, we thought straw was just for bedding. Well, straw works really, really good because it has lots of fiber and not a lot of nutrients. So it helps fill the cow up so she feels full, very similar to salad, and keeps the cows from gaining too much weight while they're not milking. And then if we move on to the next one, on our last video, we talked about chopping up corn silage and putting it in the bunk. And our bunk wasn't open yet, so we didn't get a super picture of what that really looks like cut up, chopped up. So we did pick out some longer pieces that were in the cow feed so you guys could see what it actually looks like. So this would be what's left of that stalk that you see standing out in the field. Some of this, like this piece that's thinner, is a husk. We've got some husk here. A thicker piece that would be what's left of the stalk. And then we've got a bigger piece of corn kernel here. So that's some of the longer pieces. Most of the corn is nice and small, like these here, but once in a while we do get some long pieces. And again, I had showed you the milk cow feed. This is just our milk cow feed with our hay silage, corn and grain mixed in.
All right. So we're going to give out the answer to how much water a cow drinks on a daily basis. So how much water would a cow drink, Simon?
So it depends on the weather a little bit, but 35 to 50 gallons a day. So basically 1 bathtub full of water a day each cow drinks. So when it's hotter, obviously they're going to drink a little more, and when it's cooler like this, they're going to drink a little less. But on average, about 1 bathtub full a day. So think about that. There's 250 cows here. You would have to fill your bathtub at home 250 times a day to water each one of them.
That is crazy. So we did have a question before this tour started today, and it was, what kind of technology is used, or technology or robotics is used to help feed cattle?
So we use a couple of different things. I don't have my feed mixer right here, but our feed mixer has a scale on it. So when we're adding our feed each day to mix it together, we do that by weight. So we add a certain number of pounds of corn, certain number of pounds of haylage, certain number of pounds of grain, certain number of pounds of water, and then mix it all together. The other thing that we've got here is behind me, we've got our Juno. So Juno runs once every hour and it pushes the feed into the cows. So I'm just unpaused it. It's going to start running again. So if you look, if Stephanie pans up the barn, you'll see that the feed is kind of moving away from the cows as they eat. They push it away from themselves so they can't always reach it. So once every hour, Juno will go up and down the barn and it'll push the feed closer so that no matter what, if we're not here at night, sometimes during the day, if we're not here, they can always reach their feed and never have to worry about being able to reach it. And it automatically knows how hard it's pushing on the feed. So if it knows that it's missing, if there's a hole in the feed where the cows can't reach it, it'll push closer. And we'll pan back to it. When it comes back down this other way, it'll push harder and it'll push it in closer to the cows. The other technology that we don't have here, but many farms have, is they have robotic calf feeders. So, here we go out with bottles twice a day and we feed our calves their milk. But many farms have the robotic calf feeders where whenever a calf wants to drink, she can get up and she can just walk over to the milk station and she can drink whatever she wants. Once she's full, she can back away, go lay down, go hang out with the rest of her herd mates, and the next calf can come up and drink. So they can go drink 10 or 12 times a day if they'd like.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So how do you operate this Juno?
So Juno is like, it's kind of like playing a video game, except it's on my phone. So I use Bluetooth on my phone and I connect to it and I can tell it when to run. So I've got pre-programmed routes for it. But if I need to change that, I can just go on my phone whenever I'm standing next to it, connect to it, and drive it around like a remote control car.
That is pretty neat. So so Juno runs every single day, right?
Every single day, once an hour. So once it comes back down towards us, it'll go around the corner and it'll automatically go to its charging station. It's very similar to a Roomba vacuum. So if any of you have Roomba vacuums that run during the day, it's just like that. It does its route and then goes back and charges itself.
Very cool. So I've got a question here. Do you have, what are the ear tags in the cows for?
So the ear tags just help us to keep records of each cow. Like we've got 5134 standing here, 9356 is next to us. That's so in the computer system that we've got in the office, it keeps track of when the cow had her last calf, when she's due to have her next calf, who her calf is, how much milk she gave on last test. It helps us keep all the records, how old she is, who her mom is, who her dad is. Keeps everything you could ever want to know about a cow. We keep track of that using their ear tags. And many of our cows do have names as well. Some of them have them printed on their ear tags and some of them do not. But we do name and register all of our cows.
So you guys have jerseys here, and it looks like you've got some jerseys that are definitely a little darker than others, some that have white spots. Is that just genetics?
Yeah, so jerseys can come in a various range of colors. So we've got our typical jerseys here that are kind of a lighter brown. I've got this darker jersey, which is actually, she's got a little Holstein in there, which is where the black comes from. We've got this one with a little white spot on the front. We might be able to find a darker jersey here someplace, but jerseys can range anything from almost black to a very light brown with white spots. And we've got the full range in here. We've got some with a dark face, but a lighter brown color. Some of them will kind of look a little bit gray. That all just depends on who their dad is and who their mom is and how their color is. Just like some of you will have blonde hair and blue eyes or green eyes or black black hair, brown eyes. Everybody's different, and that's just depends on who your mom and dad are.
All right. So as you guys can see, the Juno is coming back at us, and it is pushing up the feed a little bit closer than it did the first time. So it actually moved at a pretty fairly good pace too. So how long, I guess, from doing the other side and this side does it take to push up feed?
So this route takes about 23 minutes, and it's very consistent. It runs at the same speed every time, so you can almost guarantee it's going to take 23 minutes every single time, unless it gets lost or something and has to back up and refine where it is. It'll run in 23 minutes every single time.
How often does your Juno get lost?
Probably once or twice a week. Usually it's human error more often than Juno's fault. What can happen is if we put too big of a pile at the end of the barn, at the very end, it's got little strips that tell it where the end is and when it's time to turn. And if I have too big of a pile, it'll go around that and it'll drive right out the door and get stuck in the stones. And then we have to pick it up with the tractor and set it back inside. It's not a big deal, but it does happen once in a while. I'll drive by the barn and see it sitting outside alone.
Oh, poor Juno. So, so I'd like to throw out to any of the classes, feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat. So one of the cool things is it doesn't have to be just about feeding dairy cattle. It can be just anything basic about the dairy industry, about Lyman's farm specifically, or even jerseys, or any dairy cow works too. So feel free to throw that in the chat, or you can even unmute if you would like, and we'll take questions then.
So while we're waiting for some of you to think of questions, if Stephanie pans out a little bit, we've got automatic cow brushes in the barn. I've got one cow that's scratching her back right now. So as soon as the cow bumps into that brush, it'll automatically start spinning and she can scratch her back, her head, her tail, and so whenever a cow wants to be scratched, she can walk up and get her back itched. And then down on the floor right now, so we automatically clean this barn with alley scrapers every 2 hours. So right now the scraper's running down through the barn. It's almost at the end. And like I said, every 2 hours, it'll go from one end to the other and clean up after the cows so that they've always got a clean area to stand and eat. And then they've got clean sand beds in the background that they can lay down whenever they want to lay down.
How long does a cow lay down on average during the day?
On a daily basis, cows will lay down anywhere from 14 to 16 hours. The majority of the rest of that time is spent eating, and then a short period of that time is spent drinking and then just wandering around, spending time with their herd mates. And then they spend a few hours at the parlor every day, about an hour each milking. They will leave the pen and go be milked.
How often do you milk your cows here at Rudgers Registered Jerseys?
3 times a day, so every 8 hours, 4 a.m., noon, and 8 p.m. We milk. Takes about 3 hours to get through all the cows. So we've got 3 separate pens. So that each group is only away from their pen about 1 hour at a time. We don't want them away from their pen because obviously when they're away from their pen, they're away from feed, water, and their stalls. So we want to keep them as comfortable as possible. So we try to get them out of the pen, get them milked, and get them back to the pen so that they can hang out with their herd mates, sleep, and eat whenever they want.
So you mentioned that you guys have sand bedding. What is something kind of unique about sand bedding, and why do you choose that over other bedding sources like sawdust or straw?
So we like sand for a number of reasons. Sand doesn't cost that much to buy. So that's a pro to using it. The other reason that we like sand is sand does not grow bacteria. And bacteria obviously is not healthy for cows. So we want to keep the bacteria as low as possible. So using sand, we can minimize the amount of bacteria that is in their environment.
So we did have a question that asked if the cows go out to the pasture at all.
So our milk cows do not. Our milk cows are in the barn year round. Our heifers, which unfortunately aren't in this barn, our heifers are out as soon as the weather is good enough in the spring. Usually end of April, early May, they go out and they will stay out as long as we can keep them out in the fall. Our last group came in about 10 days ago when it got cold and muddy. We brought everybody in. So try to get as many of the heifers out all summer long as we can. It makes it nice for them to get out, eat some grass, have some area to run and grow and play. And then once it gets cold and muddy, we bring them in so that they're not out in the elements.
So I know that sometimes summers can get pretty warm here in Western New York. So how do you keep your cows cool in the summertime?
So this barn has several different ways that we keep them cool. So if Stephanie looks up, you'll notice that this barn actually has an insulated ceiling, just like a house. So the insulated ceiling helps keep the heat out from the sun. So when the sun's beating down on the roof, the heat can't get in the barn. The other thing is there's lots of fans in this barn. So we've got 14 big fans that automatically come on whenever it gets over 55 degrees in the barn. And then there are 4 fans up in the ceiling that also pull the heat out of the barn and help pull the air in the doors and curtains so that the air is always flowing through the barn.
All right, we did have a question here. So let me just head on over to the computer. It's not pulling up on my phone here very easily.
I think I can pull it up on my, see if I can get it here in chat.
So Mrs. Schneider's class asked, how many cows are milked in the parlor at a time?
So our parlor has 2 sides of 10. So we've got 20 units. So we would put 10 cows on one side, then we would switch to the other, put 10 cows on while the first 10 milked. So essentially we can milk 20 cows at a time. So you can usually milk about 100 cows an hour. And that helps get the cows back to their pen.
Awesome. And another technology I know that farmers use is they would use something called an automatic takeoff in their parlor. So do you guys have that on your farm?
We do. So we've got 2 people that milk in the parlor at a time. So one person at the front milking the first 5, one person in the back milking the second 5. And so they'll go through and they'll clean their teats, wipe their teats with towels, and then they put the milking unit on. And instead of having to stand with each cow and watch until she's done and take the unit off manually, we've got an automatic takeoff, which automatically measures how much milk is coming out of the cow. And once it gets down to a certain amount, it'll automatically take the unit off, and hang it up. And that way every cow is milked out the same amount. We don't accidentally over milk a cow. We don't accidentally under milk a cow. So we try to do the same thing for each cow to make their environment just the same, so it's less stressful and easier on our milkers as well, as they're not trying to keep track of when each cow's getting done.
So just like you guys at school, you have a schedule that you follow every day, you know, whether it's going to gym or art class, math and science. Cows are the same type of way. They love following a schedule. They love routine, the same type of thing every time. So just like you guys have a schedule, these girls have a specific schedule that they follow also.
Yes. So over the weekend, you guys might have noticed that the clocks fell back. And many of you may not have noticed it because you either were able to sleep through it, or, when you got up, you maybe got up a little earlier because you got an extra hour of sleep. The cows don't understand that. They don't understand that the clock changed. So we started a little earlier Sunday morning to try to offset the time change, but the cows were still very upset that we were half an hour late to starting milking and feeding. They were, instead of laying down in their stalls sleeping, they were all up at the end of their pen waiting to come to the parlor because they didn't understand why we were late.
So we've only got a few minutes left here, so you can go ahead and throw in some last minute questions or comments. So we're gonna just kind of do a little walkthrough again. So as you can see, behind all of these girls eating, there's a bunch of cows that are laying down. Some of them might have their heads tucked, some might be just laying there chewing their cud. So we talked a little bit about, cow chewing their cud. So Lyman, you guys might not feed some, I would say, extra additives to your feed. But what are some of the strangest things that get fed to cows that they actually will eat?
So when you think about cows, you think cows eat corn and they eat haylage, grass, hay. But you don't think of some of the interesting stuff. Like there's some farms that after Halloween, you don't want all those extra pumpkins to go to waste that didn't get made into jack-o'-lanterns. So I know some farms that will actually get leftover pumpkins until maybe December when it starts to freeze, and they will feed leftover pumpkins or cabbage or lettuce that didn't make it into the grocery store. Some farms will feed that. Let's see here. Some farms will feed sweet corn. So if you've got sweet corn that didn't make it to people's homes in time, we'll chop that up and make that into cow feed. I've seen people feed beets.
So one farm I know of is actually located in Pennsylvania. It's right next to Hershey Park. Actually, will feed candy to their cows. So they'll make up what's called a chocolate meal, and it's broken up pieces of Hershey's candy bars or Kit Kats, M&Ms, things like that.
And there's actually a farm, and they're a farm and a feed mill just over in Batavia that makes they make feed out of leftover potato chips. So any potato chips that weren't the right weight or didn't get made properly for human consumption would get made into cow feed. They also use Hostess products. If they expire, they will grind that up into cow feed. They also get Edamins, all sorts of different Edamins, cookies and different baked goods. They grind all that up and make it into a cow feed. Cows can basically eat anything that is not meat. So different byproducts from human consumption we can make into a cow feed, and we just use our dairy nutritionists to formulate the diet around the feeds that we have available. So different parts of the country feed different feeds depending on what they can grow and what they have available to them.
Awesome. So that looks like it's our time today here at Rudgers Registered Jersey. So I want to say thank you, Lyman, for letting us come back. This was a really great series with learning about the phones and where corn silage goes. And then learning a little bit more about the feeds that cows eat, and a little bit more specifically about the cows themselves. I hope you guys learned that cows don't actually have teeth on the top of their mouth. It's pretty cool. And that they eat a lot of different foods. So thanks again, Lyman, for that. We really appreciate coming and touring your farm today.
And thanks, guys, for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. I will send the recording out either today or tomorrow, so stay tuned for that.
Bye. Thank you.